Let me introduce our next speaker, which is Navdeep Sahni. And Navdeep's going to talk about advertising spillovers, field experiment evidence, and implications for returns from advertising. Navdeep's been doing very interesting work. He sort of, again, is a quantitative modeler who's been using big math, but he's also using big data. I don't know if we'll see big data today or not, but he's actually doing a mix of the two, and also doing experimentation, working with companies. And one interesting thing about him, he likes to hike. So I don't know when he finds time to hike, but he does try and hike. Okay.
Thanks, Ahmed. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to talk about advertising. It is well known that advertising works, sometimes. And sometimes it doesn't. It is a very safe statement to make, but it is not very informative for an advertiser who is deciding how much to invest in showing ads. So what I'm going to do today is talk about one possible mechanism that can explain when ads might work and when they won't. Okay, so there are many possible mechanisms. Ad copy is one possibility. I'm not going to look at ad copies, but I'm going to talk about one possibility, which is non-trivial. It's not obvious. Okay, so I'm going to talk about advertising spillovers. So the question is, what happens to the sales of the competitors when a firm advertises? Do they always lose, or can they even gain from another firm's advertising? And then I'm going to examine how these spillovers can affect the firm's own returns from advertising. Okay? So that is what I'm going to talk about. Why would advertising spillovers occur, and why are they interesting? So the most obvious explanation that typically people give about advertising is that when I advertise, consumers shift from my competitors to me, and therefore my competitors lose because of that. Okay? But what ads might also do is ads might remind people of other options which are similar to the advertised option. Okay? And if that happens, these other options become salient in the minds of the consumer. That has two implications. One, because the competitors, these other options are now more salient, people are likely to buy them. So these competitors may gain because of my advertising. Now, another possibility is that my own returns from advertising would depend on how consumers perceive me with respect to these other options that become salient. So the returns from advertising for me would depend on how people perceive me against these other similar options that are becoming salient. Okay? And this is how spillovers can impact the returns of advertising. The positioning of me in my category can impact the returns from advertising. Okay, so the specific questions that I'm going to focus on in this project are the following. So the story that I told you about spillovers is one story, but does it have support in the data? Does it have empirical support? So the question I'm going to ask is, can advertising in practice in a real market with real consumers lead to an increase in sales for competitors? And if this does happen, how important is it? Is it quantitatively significant? Is it something that me as an advertiser should worry about? Or is it something very non-trivial? Okay, so that is the first set of questions I want to ask. Then I want to say, okay, if spillovers do occur, what kind of firms get these spillovers? Who are the ones that benefit from my advertising? And thirdly, if these spillovers are big, they are important, then how can I recover them? What can I do to get over these spillover effects of advertising? Okay, so these are the three questions that I want to answer in this paper. And I'm going to also look at the effect of frequency. The frequency of advertising is going to be the mechanism how I might gain back some of the spillovers that I've lost to the competitors. Okay. So my approach to answering these questions is I first wrote down a model to show the implications of the effect of spillovers on returns on advertising. But don't worry, I'm not going to get into the details of the model. Okay. I'm going to focus more on the second part, the empirical part of the paper. I'm going to show you an experiment that I did with a business, a real company, and with real customers to show the effect of advertising. Specifically, I'm going to show you evidence for positive spillovers, who gains from spillovers, and what can companies do to get over these spillovers. Okay, so this is the plan for the talk. Okay, so let me start first by showing you the empirical context. So how was the experiment set up? Which is the market that I'm going to talk about? What are the kinds of ads that I'm going to talk about? Okay, so this study was run on a restaurant search website. So this website is active in 12 countries in different parts of the world. The data that I'm going to get for this study is from India. Okay, we've already seen ads about India in different sessions. So notice that those red circles there are not. It's not pepperoni. This is tomato, because this is an Indian market, mostly vegetarian dominated. Okay. So this is what the home page of the website looks like. I can't disclose the name of the website, but this is how it looks like. If I'm the consumer, I want to search for a restaurant, I can either put in my query in the text box, or I can delve down to the geographic location and browse the restaurants there. Okay. If I do that, I go to my favorite location, South Delhi. Okay. On the left-hand side, I see a bunch of organic links, some sponsored links. It provides some information about these restaurants, cuisine, average ratings, and so forth. On the right-hand side, there is a bunch of banner ads, and these are the kinds of ads I'm going to focus on in this paper. Okay. So if I'm interested in checking out any of these restaurants, I can click on the organic links on the left, or click on the ads on the right-hand side, and then that takes me to a restaurant page, okay, which looks like this. So it provides a lot of information. It provides detailed address, it provides the menu, prices, and so forth. And if I'm interested in going to this restaurant, it provides me with the map of the restaurant, where is it located, and detailed ratings and reviews, etc. And on the right-hand side, again, there are ads which are targeted to the person based on where the guy is searching for the restaurant. Okay. Now in the data, I can see what ads were exposed to the individuals. So the individuals are identified by cookies, what ads they were exposed to, what pages they checked out, what restaurants they actually focused on. Okay. But to actually get to know whether these people were interested in buying from the restaurant, so we took extra steps. So all the information on this page is available to the consumer except for the phone number, which is hidden behind that link. Okay. So for the purpose of this study, to get a better measure of purchase intention, we hid that phone number behind that link. And if I'm the consumer, I'm interested in ordering food from this restaurant, I can just take my mouse to that link and flip it over to see the phone number of the restaurant. Okay, and this action is also recorded in the data. And this action I perceive is closer to ordering food or to buying from the restaurant. Okay, so this is a setup. I have data on page visits. I have data on these sales leads, these flips of phone numbers for all the restaurants on this website. Okay. So the setup is going to be around 11 experiments in different geographic markets involving different experimental restaurants. Okay, total about 200,000 individuals identified by cookies in these 11 experimental markets. Now for these restaurants, to actually make sure that these flips of phone numbers make sense and they are actually leading to orders, what we did is the phone numbers that were displayed on this website were third-party numbers. Okay, so whenever a call was made, we knew that, okay, a call was being made to the restaurant through this website. So I could just correlate the sales leads, flips of phone numbers with calls going to the website and see that there's almost a one-to-one correlation between people looking for the phone number and people calling. So this is a good measure of actually people calling these restaurants. Okay, so I'm going to use this as my outcome measure to look at the effects of advertising. Okay, so this is how the experiments work. One of the slots is fixed, reserved for the purpose of the experiments, and the rest continue business as usual. So the sales team of the website kept selling the other slots. One of the slots in every experimental market was fixed for the purpose of the study. Okay. Now measuring the effects of ads is hard because people who get targeted with an ad are not an average person. They are more likely to buy from the restaurant already, right? Because if I'm searching closer to the restaurant, I'm going to get exposed to the ads for the restaurant in the absence of experiments. So comparing people who search for the restaurant with people who did not search for the restaurant is not a good idea because they're going to be systematically different populations. So what I did to overcome this measurement issue is design experiments on this website. Okay, so every new session that starts on the website gets allocated randomly to the ad condition or the no ad condition. Okay? So if my session today is in the no ad condition, however number of pages I browse on this website, I see a dummy banner in the experimental slot, which is not related to any of the restaurants. Okay? So the other slots continue business as usual, but this experimental slot shows a dummy banner, so it does not show the experimental restaurants banner ad. Okay? If my session is allocated to the ad condition, then on every page, there is a random chance whether I get exposed to the experimental banner or the dummy banner. Okay, so suppose today I browse 10 pages on this website, and if I'm in the no ad condition, I'm going to see the dummy banner for 10 times, not the experimental restaurants banner. If my session is in the ad condition, and if I browse 10 pages, I can see the experimental restaurants ad anywhere from 0 to 10 times, depending on the draw that I get, okay, randomly on every page. So this gives me some variation to play with to estimate the effect of frequency of advertising as well. And that's what I'm going to use to measure it. Okay? So this is how the experiments were set up to get over the measurement problems of advertising. So we can track searches, we can track leads coming to these restaurants, and then we have this exogenous variation, this random variation to estimate the effects from. Okay, so that is the setup. Now, the big question, what is the impact of advertising? What is the impact of random allocation of a session to the ad condition on competitors? So I got data for about 1,000 competitors in these 11 geographic markets. Okay, and I'm going to measure the impact of ads by looking at the likelihood of a sales lead in the ad condition relative to the likelihood of sales lead in the no ad condition. So I'm going to look at the difference between these two, and that would be my estimated effect of advertising for every competitor. I can do that for every restaurant on this website. Okay. So first, what I want to do is show you the average effects. Okay, so this number is the average increase in the likelihood of a lead for a competitor on this website. So what I want you to note is that it is positive, and it is precisely estimated. It is not 0. That's what I know from this slide. So what does this number actually mean? It means that if 100,000 cookies were allocated to the ad condition, on average, a competitor gains about 6 leads. Okay? A lead is worth about $5 for these restaurants. Okay? So if 100,000 people were allocated to the ad condition, if I'm an average competitor in this market, I get 6 leads. Okay? How big is this number? Well, compared to the average size of a competitor, it is not too big. It's about 4% of the size in terms of the number of leads a restaurant gets in the no ad condition. Okay? In the absence of ads, if I get 100 leads, when there are ads, I get 104. Okay? So it's not too big. But when we think about how many competitors exist in this market, the total spillover effect is quite large. Because if I just multiply this by the total number of competitors, I see that the total spillover effect is about 5 times the gains for the advertiser himself. So I advertise, I get some gains on average in this market, but my competitors together are getting a lot of positive spillovers. Okay, so there is a huge total effect of my advertising in this market on the competitors. Okay, so on average there is an effect. It seems to be large if I accumulate it across competitors. Now the next question is, how is this effect distributed? Is it being distributed, same to every competitor, or are some of them gaining more and others not? That is the next question I want to ask. So this picture shows you the distribution of the cross ad effects. So this is the distribution of the 1,000 cross ad effects across these 1,000 competitors. So what I want you to take away is that there are a few restaurants which are gaining quite a lot, and there are a few restaurants which are losing quite a lot because of the experimental ad. And there's a big node around 0. So a lot of restaurants, it doesn't affect them at all. For a few of them, there's a big increase. For a few of them, there's a big decrease. Okay? And the ones that experience an increase, the size of the increase is quite large. It is about 100 times the average that we saw on the previous slide. So the effect is quite large for a few competitors in this market. Okay? So for majority of them, the point estimate is positive, so they did get an increase in the ad condition. A few of them get quite a large increase. So the next question I want to ask is, can I systematically say which ones of them got a big increase and which ones of them did not get a big increase? So what I'm going to do is, first I'm going to categorize these restaurants into different categories based on the cuisine they serve. If the restaurant serves the advertiser's cuisine, they are in one category. If they don't serve the advertiser's cuisine, they are in another category. Okay? And to get an idea of their standing in the category, I got data on the ratings on the website, which is published by the publisher of the website. Okay? So I have the ratings for these restaurants, and then I have category shares for these restaurants. How do they stand in their own cuisine, basically? Okay? So there are two measures of the standing of these restaurants on this website. And what I want to do now is see if the gains from the experimental advertising is systematically correlated with these measures. Okay, so the picture here shows you 4 buckets of restaurants, almost equal size in terms of the number of restaurants that fall into them. So I see that the cross-ad effect is systematically correlated with the ratings that these restaurants have on the website. And these are the restaurants that served the advertiser's cuisine. Okay? So the restaurants that were actually gaining from these experimental ads were the ones that served the advertiser's cuisine and had a higher rating as well. Okay? If I look at the rest of the restaurants that did not serve the advertiser's cuisine, the gains are almost zero, and they do not systematically correlate with the ratings. Okay? So the ones that are gaining are the ones that served the advertiser's cuisine, and they also had a good rating on the website. So there were good restaurants which were close to the advertiser in terms of the characteristics of their cuisine that they serve. Okay? And then I also correlated it with the category share of the restaurants. So notice that although there are a lot of dots here, so every dot represents one restaurant. So there is a small increase coming from 0, and then there is a big decrease when the restaurant becomes very large. And these are the restaurants that did serve the advertiser's cuisine. Okay, so if I'm a very popular restaurant, everyone knows me already, and this experimental ad doesn't do more good to me because people were aware of me anyways. Okay, so all I can do, if I'm a very, very big company in this market, I'm going to lose from this experimental ad. But if I'm a small restaurant who can gain a little bit, then I do gain from this experimental ad. Okay, so these are the ones that did serve the advertiser's cuisine. If I look at the ones that did not serve the advertiser's cuisine, I see no effect. There's no correlation between the category share and the cross-ad effect. Okay, so there is systematic variation in the cross-ad effect for restaurants that serve the cuisine, that were not direct competitors or close competitors. There was no systematic variation in the cross-ad effect. Okay. So these are just some numbers to check for statistical robustness of these findings. They just reiterate the same thing that I said earlier. The ones that are affected are the ones that do serve the advertiser's cuisine, and the ones that were gaining more were the ones that had high ratings in that category. Okay. Okay. So now we know that there is positive spillovers on average. Some restaurants are gaining quite a lot, some are losing. What can me as an advertiser do about it? Can I recover these spillovers? Can I do anything to get over these spillovers? So what I'm going to do is look for the effect of intensity of advertising. So by the design of the experiments, what I know is that people who browsed the website with the same intensity get exposed to the experimental banner a different number of times. Okay, because there was a random chance on every page whether they get it displayed the experimental ad or not. Okay, so I can look within the set of individuals that have the same browsing intensity and check whether spillovers happen more when the intensity of advertising is more, or when they happen more when the intensity is lower. Okay, so I can sort of regress the likelihood of spillovers on the intensity of advertising within the set of people who had the same browsing intensity. Okay, so this is what I do here. So the left column tells you the impact of the number of times the experimental ad is shown on spillover effects, on leads for the competitors that serve the advertiser's cuisine. And I find that the spillover effects are large and positive for low intensity of advertising. Okay? So when the number of ads were small, then the effects were large. If I replace the dependent measure from competitors to the advertiser, I find that there is gains, there is a recovery from increasing the frequency of advertising. So you advertise a little bit, you gain a little bit, your competitors are gaining a lot. You advertise more, your competitors lose, and you gain more. So you recover some of the spillovers that were lost to the competitors. Okay, so that is the takeaway from this slide. So in this particular case, up to 3 ad exposures, I was benefiting my competitor. After that, I was recovering these spillovers and gaining it for myself as an advertiser. Okay, so to conclude, what are the takeaways? What did we find here? First of all, there are significant positive spillovers in this market for the competitors. On average, there was a 4% increase in the competitive market size. They seem small, but the total cumulated spillover effect is quite large. It's about 5 times the advertiser's own gains. From advertising for high intensity, for high rating, same cuisine restaurants, the gains were quite large. They were about 25% on average. Okay. Then the intensity of advertising plays a big role in spillovers. So for low intensity, I'm benefiting myself, I'm benefiting my competitors quite a lot. When I increase the intensity, I recover some of these spillovers and get over it. Okay, and so the advertisers can control the spillovers. And this provides one mechanism to explain the differences in returns from advertising. I didn't get into the details of the model, but if you are interested, you're welcome to look at the paper. Okay. Thank you, and any questions? Yes.
Was there an interaction effect between the position of the ad and the cuisine? So if I serve similar cuisine and I'm lower on the ad position versus higher?
So that's an interesting question. So in this experiment, I also did manipulate the position that I didn't talk about here. So I could check for that effect, but I do find some interesting effects, but statistically for spillovers, they're not precisely estimated for me to make a statement. Yeah. Yes?
Yeah, but this is brilliant. It's very, very insightful. You studied this in the restaurant market, which is fragmented. Do you have any hypotheses how this would play out in in less fragmented markets?
Great question. So this market, as we saw, was very competitive, right? So there was a lot of competitors, and there's so many characteristics, a lot of restaurants. So I would say it depends on what your ad reminds people of. Even if it's a 3-player market, for example, and if I'm a small player, a new player, for example, and it reminds people of another brand, another product, then I think this mechanism does have a role to play. But of course, I don't have real data to show you in other markets. I would be happy to get that data if it's possible. Yeah.
Have you looked at this for TV as well, and to see when you can incite spillover versus when you want to stop it? Because for a lot of us, we have either multiple brands in a category, we have master brands where we do want spillover sometimes to go to the other categories or the other brands.
So I haven't looked at TV, and one of the reasons for that is measurement is very hard on TV. It's very hard to link sales or sales leads happening to an ad exposure. It requires working with aggregate data, and identifying these minute mechanisms with aggregate data becomes very hard. Again, I would love to do that. Haven't done it yet. Probably will have to use methodology that Mitch used, some stated preference data to see when people saw the ad and what they did after that. I think that will be a good approach. Any other questions? Otherwise, we're good to go.